Rain had been falling on the city for 3 nights straight, the kind of rain that blurs the streetlights into bleeding halos and turns every alleyway into a murky mirror reflecting things no one wants to look at too closely. Inside a cramped, nicotine-stained apartment on the 5th floor of a building everyone had forgotten about, 4 men sat around a wooden table scarred by knife grooves and decades of arguments. The clock on the wall ticked with the stubborn insistence of something that has nothing left to do but count down to disaster. And there, in the dim amber glow of a single lamp, the perfect heist was being planned. What made this one different, what made it terrifying, was not that the plan was uniquely brilliant. It wasn't. It was simple, clean, efficient. No, the real danger came from the men at the table. Each one had something inside him that was hollowing out like a termite-eaten beam. Desperation, pride, rage, greed, and worst of all, the belief they deserved something better, something bigger, something no one else should touch. The heist was not a job. It was a last chance. And men who think they're on their last chance are the ones who always go too far. Marcus Hale leaned forward, tapping an unsharpened pencil against a hand-drawn blueprint. He was the one who brought the idea. Tall, hollow-cheeked, with the posture of a man who'd spent too many nights sitting on the edge of his bed, listening for footsteps outside his door. He used to be a security consultant, until he'd been fired for stealing company data. Not caught, fired. Marcus always said there was a difference. "We go in at 3:17 a.m., he said, the pencil ticking like a metronome. That's when the guard rotation overlaps. One guy clocks out, the next hasn't fully clocked in yet. They'll never admit it, but for about 4 minutes each night, that vault is practically unattended. We exploit that window." Jared, the getaway driver, exhaled smoke that curled like a warning. He was younger than the others, though the lines around his eyes came from a lifetime of mistakes that aged him faster than time ever could. "You're sure?" he said. 4 minutes and 12 seconds. Marcus nodded once. 4 minutes and 12 seconds. I've been watching them for 6 months. They do the same thing every night. On the blueprint, Marcus circled his small box representing the main vault of the Everline transport facility, a cash-handling location that processed millions in bills every week. It was meant to be a temporary hub for armored trucks before money was redistributed to banks and ATMs across the region. Most people didn't even know the place existed, which is why it was perfect, and why it was a trap. Derek Lane, broad-shouldered, ex-military, with a stare like he was constantly calculating which bone to break first, rubbed his beard and leaned over the table. "And what about the vault door? You said it was newer than the system. Brand new biometric lock. We don't have access to the manager. No fingerprints, no retinal scan. How do we bypass something like that?" Marcus smirked, the kind of smirk a man uses when he's been waiting for someone to ask him exactly what he wants to brag about. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a small, flat device encased in black carbon. "We don't bypass it. We freeze it." Luca, the quiet one, too quiet, like a shadow that sometimes forgot to breathe, finally lifted his eyes from the blueprint. "Freeze it? Like, literally?" Marcus held up the device. "This thing emits a microthermal shock. It cracks the internal sensors just enough to trigger a fail-safe reboot. During reboot, the lock automatically switches to backup override mode. And guess what the override is?" Jared snorted. "Don't tell me it's something stupid like a key." "It's something stupid like a key," Marcus confirmed. "One single metal key, one that hangs on the supervisor's belt. So we knock out the supervisor," Derek said, leaning back. "Easy." Marcus hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, just long enough that Luca saw it. "What aren't you saying?" Luca asked quietly. Marcus's jaw flexed. "It isn't that simple. The supervisor is armed and paranoid. There's a rumor he's ex-law enforcement, and he wears a bullet-resistant vest under his jacket." Derek grinned. "So aim for the head." That was the moment, the exact moment where the perfect heist absorbed its first drop of blood. A tiny one. But blood spreads. It stains. It remembers its way back. "This is supposed to be clean," Marcus muttered. "We go in, neutralize, get the key, open the vault, take the bags, get out. No bodies." "Bodies happen," Derek said, "especially when people don't listen." Rain hammered against the window like knuckles. The city outside was a gray blur of disappointment and malfunctioning streetlights, flickering like dying stars. Each man stared at the blueprint as if it could rewrite their lives, fix everything they'd broken. Maybe in another world it could. But in this world, the blueprint was nothing more than destiny drawn on cheap paper. A knock suddenly echoed through the apartment. 3 sharp taps. The men tensed. No one moved. Marcus's pulse spiked. They weren't expecting anyone. Not tonight. Not ever. Luca was the first to stand. He glided toward the door without sound, like something that had lived too long in silence. He pressed his eye to the peephole. Then he froze. His voice was a whisper. It's her. They didn't need to ask who her was. There was only one person's presence that made all 4 men look like children caught stealing from a church donation box. Mara Quinn, Marcus's sister, and the reason the heist existed at all. Marcus slowly stood, feeling the sudden weight of every bad decision he'd ever made. "Let her in," he said quietly. When Luca opened the door, the hallway light spilled in, casting Mara in a pale glow. She was drenched from the rain, but didn't seem to notice. Her coat clung to her like wet leaves stuck to a gravestone. Her eyes, sharp, unblinking, went straight to her brother. "You weren't home," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation, "so I figured you'd be here." Marcus swallowed. "Mara, now's not a good time." She looked at the table, at the blueprint, at the men staring back at her. "You're doing it, aren't you? The thing you said you wouldn't do. The thing you promised Dad you'd never do again." Jared looked at Derek, who looked at Luca, who looked at Marcus. The room felt suddenly too small, too loud with heartbeats and breathing. "Mara, listen," Marcus began. "No," she snapped, voice cracking like dry branches. "You listen. You think this is going to fix everything? You think walking into some vault with a few criminals is going to save me? Save us?" She stepped closer. "Or are you doing this because you're terrified of what happens if you don't?" Marcus didn't answer. He couldn't, because she was right. Mara lowered her voice. "You owe money to the wrong people. I know that. I'm not stupid. But this?" She pointed at the blueprint. "This will kill you." Derek crossed his arms. "Lady, with all due respect." "No," she said without even looking at him. "Not respect, not tonight. I'm not leaving until you say it, until you say you're not doing this." Marcus closed his eyes. The rain outside intensified. A passing siren washed the room in flickering blue reflections. Then Marcus whispered, "I can't stop." Mara stared at him, really stared, as if seeing the cracks in him for the first time. "You're going to die," she said softly. Marcus didn't argue. That was the worst part. Silence pressed down like a weight. Then Luca, voice low and hesitant, spoke. "Mara, if he walks away, we all die. He's not doing this for greed. He's doing this because someone out there already marked him. If he doesn't pay the debt, they kill him. And maybe you." Mara's breath faltered. Marcus finally met her eyes. "This is the only way." The only way. Those 4 words were the funeral bells for the perfect heist, because nothing good ever starts with the only way. Mara exhaled shakily, wiping rainwater from her lashes. Then with a trembling voice, she said the sentence that dug its claws into the fate of every man in that room. "Then I'm coming with you." Marcus stepped back as if slapped. "No, absolutely not. If you go down, I go down. That's how this works. That's how family works." Derek frowned. Jared cursed under his breath. Luca just looked at Marcus with a quiet, inevitable sadness. The blueprint, perfect, clean, elegant, had just been contaminated with something far more dangerous than greed. Emotion. And once emotion enters a heist, blood always follows. As the storm roared outside and the lamp flickered, like something trying desperately to stay alive, Marcus realized that their perfect robbery was no longer perfect. It was doomed, and they hadn't even stepped inside the vault yet. The rain hadn't let up by the time they all stepped out of the apartment, and Marcus took it as a bad omen. It hammered the rooftop vents, churned the gutters, and fell in heavy sheets across the cracked pavement like the sky was scrubbing the city clean of sins that hadn't yet happened. Or maybe sins that were waiting for these 6 people, 5 thieves and 1 unwilling sister to commit them. The city lights shimmered through the storm, stretching across puddles like a dying pulse. Marcus couldn't help but think that if the city had a heartbeat, tonight it sounded faint. They moved quickly toward Jared's van, its dark blue paint dulled by years of sun damage and poor decisions. The windows were fogged from the humid air, the side mirror held together with electrical tape. It was the kind of vehicle no one would look at twice, perfect for a crew trying to disappear into the neighborhood like a bruise under a sleeve. As they climbed in, Mara hesitated with one foot on the wet asphalt. Rain streaked her hair into dark rivers that clung to her cheeks, her eyes shining with fear and resolve. Marcus put a hand on her back gently, guiding her inside. Her breath hitched, but she didn't resist. She sat between Luca and Jared, hands clasped so tight her knuckles glowed white. "You don't have to be here," Marcus murmured. "I do," she said without looking at him, "because you won't forgive yourself if I'm not." Her voice was steady, too steady, like someone speaking over the sound of their own heartbeat. Jared started the engine, and the van shuddered awake like something old and reluctant. The headlights cut through the rain in 2 hazy beams, and with a low groan, the van rolled out, joining the quiet procession of late-night vehicles that only came out during storms, the kind that hid people who didn't want to be seen. Derek checked his gear in the back, meticulously adjusting the straps of his vest. He wasn't wearing anything obvious, just layers padded in strategic places, just enough to keep him alive if bullets started flying, not enough to suggest he expected them. He grinned at Luca, the way predators smile at other predators to make sure they still recognize each other. "You sure the freezing device works?" Derek asked Marcus, tapping the small black case on his knee. "Yes," Marcus said, "if everything goes exactly according to schedule. And if it doesn't?" Marcus didn't answer. Neither did Luca. The van continued forward, wipers sliding rhythmically like a metronome marking the seconds before the world would irrevocably shift. Jared's hands tightened around the wheel every time a gust of wind pushed the van sideways. His jaw clenched in a way that made it obvious he'd driven to worse places in worse weather. But even he kept glancing in the rearview mirror at Mara, like having her there made the whole thing heavier. Derek leaned forward between the seats. "Marcus, you owe us one thing before we go in. You said you'd explain why we're doing this now. Why not 2 months ago? Why not next week? Why tonight?" Marcus stared out at the rain-smeared windshield. The headlights blurred everything into a wash of color. Red taillights, amber street lamps, neon signs. He exhaled slowly. "Because the man I owe money to gave me a deadline," he said finally. Jared cursed quietly. Mara stiffened. Luca's voice was soft. "How long?" Marcus swallowed. "Until sunrise." The van fell silent. A creeping dread slithered through everyone, settling somewhere cold between their ribs. Sunrise. That meant that even if the robbery went perfectly, they'd be racing the clock not just for police response time, but for Marcus's life. "Who is he?" Derek asked. Marcus hesitated. "Raymond Black." That name hit the van like a dropped stone. Jared immediately slowed down, staring at Marcus as if he'd thought he'd misheard. "Black? Raymond Black? The same one who—" "Yes," Marcus said sharply. "That one." "Marcus, Jesus Christ." Jared shook his head. "You never said that. You never told us you were into him." "Would you have agreed to help me if I did?" Marcus challenged. Jared didn't answer. Raymond Black wasn't a crime boss. He was worse. He was a man people whispered about even in prison yards. A collector of debts. A man who didn't shout, didn't threaten, didn't brag. He just made people disappear, quietly, effortlessly, without mess or spectacle. A mathematician of violence. Mara's voice broke through the dread like a thin thread. "Marcus, why didn't you tell me?" "Because telling you would have put a target on you, and because I didn't want you to look at me the way you're looking at me now." She lowered her eyes.
Rain battered the van harder as if trying to break through. 2 more minutes passed in tense silence before they reached the industrial district. The Everline transport facility sat at the end of a dead-end road, flanked by fences topped with spiraling razor wire. No signs, no logo, just a squat rectangular building that looked like an abandoned warehouse to anyone who knew better, but they knew better. A single guard booth stood by the gate, its window streaked with rain. A lone figure inside flipped through a magazine, barely glancing up as the van rolled past. Jared kept his face angled down, pretending to be a courier making a late delivery. The guard pressed the button to open the barrier, without a word. As the gate creaked upward, Marcus whispered, "This is it." The van rolled into the lot and parked behind 2 armored trucks that gleamed under the floodlights like wet steel tombs. The heist team stepped out into the rain, each breath turning to mist. Mara hesitated again. Marcus put a hand on her shoulder, but she brushed it off. "I'm here," she said. "Don't try to protect me now." They moved quickly, not running, but not wasting a second. Derek approached the side access door and looked at Marcus. "You said the guard inside crosses the hall every 28 seconds, he muttered. "Sure?" "Positive." "And the camera loop?" "Luca has it," Marcus said, nodding to the quiet man. Luca held a small device in his palm, thumb resting on a toggle switch. "Once I activate this, we have exactly 40 minutes where the cameras will replay old footage. After that, the system boots into error mode. They'll know something is wrong. So, 40 minutes to get in, freeze the biometric lock, get the key, open the vault, get the bags, and get out." Jared summarized. "That's barely enough time." Marcus met his eyes. "Then we don't waste any." Luca flicked the switch. A faint crackle rippled through the air as the device hijacked the feed. For a moment, the lights on the panel near the door flickered like dying fireflies. Then they stabilized. "Let's go," Derek said. He pushed the side door open and slipped inside like a shadow. The others followed silently, one by one, until only Mara and Marcus stood outside in the rain. Mara grabbed his wrist. "Marcus, when this is over, we're leaving the city. You and me. We're done with all of this." Rainwater dripped from Marcus's hair into his eyes. "If we make it out." "No," she said firmly. "When?" He nodded, not because he believed it, but because he needed to. They stepped inside. The facility interior was colder than they expected, the kind of cold that sinks into bones. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, flickering intermittently. The long hallway ahead was empty, polished concrete reflecting the faint vibrations of machinery deeper in the building. Derek pressed his back against the wall, waiting for the guard to pass. 27 seconds. 28 seconds. Footsteps echoed. A man in a security uniform walked by, humming under his breath. He didn't even turn his head. As soon as he was out of sight, they moved. They passed office doors, break rooms, stacks of sealed cash pallets shrink-wrapped like corpses waiting for identification. The deeper they went, the louder the machinery hum grew, blending with the storm outside. Finally, they reached the heart of the facility, the vault room. A thick steel door, biometric lock glowing faint blue, security keypad panel. A camera in the corner looping Luca's footage. Marcus stepped forward, removing the freezing device. "This is it," he whispered. Derek nodded and pulled his gun, a quiet gesture that sent a ripple of fear through Mara. Luca positioned himself near the corner. Jared stood near the hallway, keeping watch. Marcus activated the device. A high-pitched whine filled the air as frost crept across the lock, cracking the internal sensors. The screen flickered, glitched, then went dark. A mechanical click echoed. The lock rebooted. Override mode activated. Manual key required. "Time to get the supervisor," Derek said. But before Marcus could respond, a voice echoed from behind them. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" They spun around. The supervisor stood at the end of the hall, hand reaching toward the gun on his hip, confusion turning to horror as he saw their faces. Marcus froze. Derek did not. A gunshot exploded through the hallway. The supervisor collapsed instantly, blood spreading in a dark pool beneath him. Mara screamed, and everything, every second of calm planning, every perfect detail, shattered. The perfect heist was over. The bloody one had just begun. The warehouse fell into a suffocating silence after the gunshot faded, and for a long moment, no one moved. Not Leo, not Marco's body leaning awkwardly against the concrete pillar, not the dust gently drifting down from the rafters like settling ash. Leo's hand trembled around the pistol. He breathed through clenched teeth, pulling the cold air into his lungs slowly, as if convincing himself he was still alive. What he had just done, what he was forced to do, hummed in his ears like a broken neon sign buzzing against an empty midnight street. He stared at Marco's unmoving form, the man who had once lifted him out of a gutter behind a grocery store, who taught him how to negotiate with criminals without sounding like one, who had shielded him from violence for years. The guilt seeped into his bones like poison. But Leo didn't have the luxury of time. He shoved the pistol into the back of his waistband, stood up and wiped his hands on his jeans, though they were not bloody, just shaking. He needed to get out. He needed to get help. The wall seemed to close in around him as he staggered through the maze of crates and pallets, heading for the back exit. But the warehouse had other plans. The moment he pushed through the steel door, a wet gust of air slapped him in the face. Rain. Hard rain. The kind of rain that smudged footprints, erased tire tracks, and washed away evidence too fast. He barely reached the alley when he heard it. The crunch of gravel behind him. Deliberate. Slow. Someone was there. He spun. A tall figure stepped out of the shadows. A man with a black raincoat, midnight dark hair slicked back by the storm, and a face that looked like it had been carved by a sculptor obsessed with cruelty. Vincent Moretti. The name struck Leo like a hammer. This was the very same man whose crew had killed 8 bank hosts in that previous robbery, the brutal ghost who had been hunting Marco for nearly a decade, the leader of the rival crew, the butcher whose presence always meant blood was coming. But why was he here? Vincent walked toward Leo with slow, almost bored confidence. "You left in a hurry. Thought I'd see how the reunion was going," Vincent murmured, hands in his pockets as if this were a casual chat. Leo couldn't breathe. Vincent stepped closer, boots splashing through puddles. "Marco, I'm guessing he didn't make it?" The cruel smile widened. "Shame, I was hoping to do it myself." Leo didn't answer. He couldn't. His voice was trapped under the weight of fear and sorrow. Vincent watched him like a cat studies a wounded bird. "Relax," he said softly. "If I was here to kill you, you'd already be dead." That didn't comfort Leo at all. Vincent tilted his head. "Now, here's the interesting part. I didn't kill Marco. You did." Leo swallowed. His skin crawled. "And you know what that means?" Vincent's voice dropped to a whisper. "That means you are far more valuable to me alive than he ever was." Leo froze. He understood now. Vincent hadn't shown up to finish Marco. He had shown up because Marco was dead and someone had told him. Was it planned? Was Leo being manipulated? Vincent stepped into the alley light, revealing the faint outline of a handgun holstered under his coat. "You're going to help me finish what Marco started." He smiled, cruelly patient. "Because if you don't, I will introduce you to the kind of pain that makes death feel like a vacation." Leo didn't know what terrified him more, Vincent's calmness or the truth that he had no idea what Marco had started. But Vincent offered no explanation. Instead, he turned and said, "Walk with me." Leo followed because he knew the alternative. They moved silently through the wet alley, the rain pounding the pavement like a drumbeat. The night felt alive around them. Neon reflections shivered on the puddles. The city seemed unaware that 2 men, one guilty, one monstrous, were passing through it like a pair of ghosts. Vincent led him to an idling black SUV near the end of the alley. 2 men sat in the front seats, their silhouettes sharp and aggressive. Vincent slid inside and gestured for Leo to join him. "We're going somewhere safe," he said, voice low and flat. "Somewhere private." Leo obeyed. The moment the door closed, the vehicle pulled away. The drive was long and suffocating. Rain hammered the roof,
Streetlights flashed by in flickering streaks. Vincent finally broke the silence. "Did Marco tell you about the ledger?" Leo blinked. "Ledger?" Vincent let out a quiet laugh. "So he didn't. That makes this even more interesting." The SUV turned down a remote industrial road. Factories and old shipping yards rolled past like abandoned skeletons. Finally, they stopped in front of a rusted building whose windows were boarded from the inside. Vincent gestured for Leo to follow again. Marco had something of mine, something he stole years ago, something that could destroy me, and I want it back. Leo felt his pulse thundering in his neck. "What is it?" Vincent smirked. "Records. Details, names, dates. Every payment, every shipment, every payoff, my entire operation written down in one neat little book." Leo stared at him. "Why would Marco have that?" "Because he stole it," Vincent said sharply, "before he fled, before he disappeared." Leo remembered Marco's words. Everything was my fault. Maybe this was what he meant. "And now," Vincent continued, "you're going to help me find it." Leo shook his head. "I don't know anything about a ledger, I swear." Vincent moved so fast, Leo didn't even see it, just felt the impact. Vincent grabbed his shirt, slammed him against the cold metal wall of the warehouse, and leaned in so close Leo could smell the gun oil on his coat. "I don't need your knowledge. I need your usefulness." Leo's voice cracked. "I don't understand." "You don't have to." Vincent loosened his grip. Before Leo could respond, the door behind them swung open, revealing a dim interior and the silhouette of another man, Vincent's right-hand enforcer. The man stepped forward holding a phone. "Boss, there's a problem. A big one." Vincent frowned. "What?" "Police scanner reports shots fired in the Riverside Warehouse District. They found blood, a body, and..." The enforcer glanced at Leo. "They think it's connected to an ongoing organized crime investigation." Leo's heart sank. Marco's death was already discovered. Vincent looked at Leo with a cold, assessing gaze. "You see what you've done?" Leo didn't speak. He couldn't. The fear was too heavy. Vincent turned to his men. "We move now. Burn everything. Get rid of any trace we were here." The warehouse erupted into motion. Men scrambled in shadows, gathering crates, shoving documents into duffel bags, clearing out weapons and equipment. Leo stumbled back as chaos raged around him. Vincent pointed at him. "You're coming with me. You leave my sight, you die." Leo nodded helplessly. The night spiraled deeper into darkness as they exited through a side door heading toward another vehicle. But just as Vincent reached for the handle, a sharp beam of light cut through the black. The unmistakable glare of headlights turning into the yard. Tires screeched, doors slammed. Police. Vincent hissed a curse. "Move!" But it was too late. A voice echoed across the yard. "Freeze! Hands where we can see them!" Leo raised his trembling hands immediately. Vincent didn't. Instead, he grabbed Leo's arm and pulled him behind a stack of metal barrels. "Stay quiet," he ordered. Officer footsteps approached, voices crossed in sharp commands. Radio static buzzed like angry insects. Leo peeked around the barrel just enough to see silhouettes moving with flashlights, sweeping the yard. Vincent leaned close. "This changes things, but not the plan." Leo whispered back, "What plan?" "The one Marco died for." Leo's stomach twisted. He didn't want to be part of any plan, especially one tied to blood and betrayal, but he didn't have a choice. The danger was everywhere, police who might shoot him on sight if they mistook him for part of Vincent's crew, and Vincent who definitely would shoot him if he tried to run. Vincent tapped his shoulder. "Follow my lead." He pulled Leo deeper into the shadows. They moved like wraiths through an eerie graveyard of rusted equipment, slipping between beams of flashlight. Every step felt like walking on glass. Every breath felt stolen. But the moment they reached the back gate, the moment freedom seemed inches away, a single voice shattered the illusion. "Stop right there." A flashlight hit Leo directly in the face. He froze like ice. An officer aimed a pistol at him, shouting for backup. Vincent didn't freeze. He moved like a monster born from darkness, grabbed Leo by the collar, yanked him sideways, and shoved him behind a dumpster. A gunshot cracked. Another. Officer shouted. Vincent fired back. Leo crouched, shaking, his ears ringing. He'd never been in a real shootout before. The sharp metallic scent of gunfire filled the air. Sirens wailed closer. Rain hammered everything. Vincent ducked beside him. "Listen carefully," he growled. "From this moment on, you're mine. You survive with me, or you die alone." Leo clamped his hands over his ears. His world was collapsing. Marco was dead, police everywhere, a crime lord dragging him through hell, and a mysterious ledger at the center of everything. Vincent grabbed Leo's chin, forcing eye contact. "You want to live? Then help me finish this." Leo didn't want to finish anything. He just wanted to survive the night. Rain hammered the metal roof of the abandoned factory as Leo and Vincent ducked deeper into the shadows, the last echo of gunfire rolling off into the distance like thunder fading into a stormy sky. The police had retreated for the moment, regrouping, repositioning, but they were still close. Too close. Leo could feel the weight of their presence pressing down on the night, turning the air dense and suffocating. He wasn't a criminal. He wasn't even a fighter. Yet here he was, soaked in sweat and rainwater, crouching beside a man whose very name made hardened gang leaders flinch. Vincent stood absolutely still, listening. No movement, no breath, no shift in muscle. The man could freeze like a statue carved from obsidian. His eyes stayed fixed on the narrow slit in the factory wall where flashlight beams faintly swept across the yard. Leo followed his gaze, swallowing hard. He couldn't stop trembling. His wrists hurt from gripping the wet concrete. Everything in him screamed to run, but his legs felt like they were filled with lead. Finally, Vincent whispered, "They'll circle the perimeter. 5 minutes, maybe less." Leo nodded quickly, though he barely understood what that meant. His brain was too foggy, too overwhelmed by the violent chaos of the past hour. Marco dying in his arms, Vincent emerging from the darkness, police closing in, bullets tearing through the night. It all felt like fragments of a nightmare he hadn't woken up from. Vincent turned to him. "You're going to help me find that ledger. And tonight, you're going to start earning your place." Leo blinked. "Why me? I didn't even know Marco had it." Vincent's tone was maddeningly calm. "Because Marco trusted no one. No one except you. That means he left clues behind, something only you would recognize." He tilted his head slightly. "Even if you don't realize it yet." Leo wanted to argue, to scream that he knew nothing about any ledger or clues or conspiracies, but he said nothing. A part of him feared that denial alone might earn him a bullet. Vincent motioned for him to stand. "We're moving." Quietly. Leo rose shakily. His wet clothes clung to his skin. The factory floor stretched before them, rusted machinery, shattered windows, and a lingering smell of oil and mildew. Rainwater dripped from gaps in the roof, forming dark puddles that reflected the faint moonlight. The silence felt heavy, like the building itself was holding its breath. "What now?" Leo whispered. Vincent pointed toward a back staircase leading to an upper mezzanine. "We wait, then we plan." Leo followed him up the steps, each creak echoing like a warning. Once they reached the upper level, Vincent pulled out a small flashlight and scanned the dusty shelves lined with old tools and scrap metal. It seemed empty, old, forgotten, abandoned, but something about Vincent's demeanor changed. He was searching for something, tracing the edges of the room with an almost predatory awareness. Leo hesitated. "We're hiding here?" "Not hiding," Vincent corrected. "Observing and thinking." He kneeled near an old workbench, the flashlight illuminating a scattering of rusted bolts and cobwebs. Leo sat against the wall, hugging his knees to his chest. His entire body was shivering, not from cold, but from the dread that had seeped deep into his bones. Vincent finally broke the silence. "Marco wasn't always a traitor." Leo stiffened. He didn't expect Vincent to speak about Marco, not after what he'd said earlier, not with such a distant, restrained tone. Vincent kept rummaging through the shelves as he continued. He used to work for me, years ago, before he ran. And when he ran, he didn't just disappear. He took that ledger with him. Leo didn't know whether to feel surprise or disgust. Marco had warned him earlier. Everything was my fault. Now he understood why Marco was so scared to return, why he begged Leo to leave. "What's in the ledger?" Leo asked quietly. Vincent turned to him. For a moment, Leo saw something hollow behind the man's eyes, an emptiness carved by years of violence. Then the hollow vanished, replaced by the cold fire Leo had come to fear. My entire life's work. Sins written in ink. Then the hollow vanished, replaced by the cold fire Leo had come to fear. If the police ever get that book, they can bury every one of my men, including me. Leo swallowed. And you think I know where it is? I know you know something. Vincent approached him slowly, boots thudding faintly against the metal floor. Marco kept you alive for a reason. He kept you close. He trusted you. People like him don't do that without expecting something in return. Leo's breath hitched. He didn't give me anything, didn't tell me anything. Maybe he didn't tell you, Vincent murmured. But he might have shown you. Leo frowned. What does that mean? Vincent paused, then sat beside him, far too close. Leo felt the weight of his presence, the smell of rain-soaked leather and cigar smoke. Tell me, Vincent said, what were Marco's last words? Leo hesitated. Something in him resisted. Marco's dying moment was something sacred, personal, not meant for a man like Vincent. But refusing wasn't an option. He said he was sorry. Leo's voice cracked. He said everything was his fault. Vincent's jaw tightened. Go on. He told me, Leo swallowed hard, to never go back to the beginning. Vincent's expression shifted, subtly, dangerously. Did he now? Leo nodded. Vincent leaned back, seemingly deep in thought. Rain drummed on the roof above them. The building felt colder. That's your clue, Vincent finally said. Leo frowned. I don't understand. Vincent stood. Think about it, Leo. The beginning. What was Marco's beginning? What was your beginning with him? Leo tried to think. He remembered the grocery store alley where Marco first found him half-conscious from exhaustion and dehydration. He remembered Marco giving him a sandwich, a jacket, and a warning to never trust a city that never sleeps. But surely Marco had never hidden anything there. Not that, Vincent muttered. Think harder. Leo squeezed his eyes shut, forcing himself back through memories, moments, conversations, small habits Marco had. A flicker surfaced. His old apartment, Leo whispered. Apartment? Leo nodded slowly. He always called it the beginning. He moved there after he ran from you, said it was where his new life started. Vincent stared at him for a long moment. Then something cold and dangerous lit up behind his eyes. That's it, Vincent said. That's where he hid it. Leo's stomach dropped. You think the ledger is in his old apartment? Vincent cracked a faint wolfish smile. I don't think. I know. Before Leo could respond, a sudden noise shattered the moment. A metallic clank from below. Vincent immediately killed his flashlight. Voices echoed from the factory floor. Police. Searching again, closer this time. Vincent grabbed Leo's arm. We move. Now. Leo barely had time to breathe before Vincent dragged him down the staircase, keeping low, moving like a shadow sliding along the walls. The police beam swept near the upper level, barely seconds behind. They slipped through a maintenance door at the back of the factory and emerged into the cold night again. Rain fell heavier now, thunder rumbling across the horizon. The dark industrial district looked like a maze of broken buildings and flooded alleys. Leo panted. "How are we getting out?" Vincent scanned the area, then pointed toward a fenced-off loading dock. "Through there." They sprinted. Leo nearly slipped in a puddle, but Vincent dragged him upright without breaking stride. Sirens wailed closer, more police. Lights flashed. When they reached the fence, Vincent produced a bolt cutter from inside his coat. Leo didn't even want to know how he hid it, and snapped the chain with 2 powerful squeezes. The gate swung open. They darted through and ran into the darkness behind the factory block. By the time they reached the far side of the district, Leo felt like his lungs were on fire. He leaned against a brick wall, gasping. Vincent checked his phone, seemingly unfazed. "We're heading to Marco's old apartment." Leo wiped rain from his eyes. "But the police," Vincent cut him off, "are busy searching the factory. They won't expect us to double back into the city." Leo stared at him. "This is insane." Vincent pointed a finger at him. "What's insane is thinking you have a choice." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You're in this now, Leo, whether you wanted to or not." Leo felt the truth of it like a blade against his throat. Vincent turned away. "Come on, the night isn't over yet." And Leo followed him into the storm, toward the place Marco once called the beginning, the place where the truth about everything waited like a ghost buried in old walls. Whatever they found there would end this story. Or end them. The city felt different at night, less alive, more alert, as if it sensed that something was about to change. Leo followed Vincent through narrow streets slick with rain, the tires of passing cars hissing like serpents against the wet asphalt. Streetlights flickered overhead, casting pale halos onto the empty sidewalks. Every few steps, Leo glanced behind him, convinced the shadows were shifting, convinced someone, police, gang members, the ghosts of the night, was following them. Vincent walked with the same chilled certainty he carried everywhere, every movement precise, his boots splashing through puddles without hesitation. He didn't check over his shoulder. He didn't slow down. It was as if he already knew the night belonged to him. Marco's old apartment was deeper in the heart of the city, far from the industrial wasteland, far from the gunshots, far from the blood that stained Leo's memories. Leo had never wanted to see it again. He'd visited once, months ago, when Marco needed to pick up a few forgotten belongings. The building had felt strange even then. Quiet, too quiet, like everyone inside was holding secrets behind their doors. Now, under the storm, it looked almost haunted. They turned down a narrow residential street lined with old 2-story buildings, their brick walls darkened by rain and time. The windows were mostly dark, except for the occasional TV glow flickering across a curtain. The world felt asleep, except Leo. His heart pounded, loud and relentless, like a drum echoing inside an empty chamber. Vincent stopped in front of a building with faded green paint and a rusted fire escape that clung to the side like broken metal ribs. A dim porch light flickered overhead. "This is it," Vincent said quietly. Leo nodded, swallowing his fear. The building looked ordinary, but ordinary places often hid the darkest things. Vincent tried the front door, locked. He didn't hesitate. He reached under the flower pot beside the entrance. Leo remembered Marco using that same spot. A spare key sat beneath, dusty and forgotten. Vincent smirked faintly, as if amused by how predictable Marco had been. He unlocked the door. Inside, the building was cold and dim. The hallway smelled of old carpet and damp plaster. The buzz of a dying fluorescent light hummed overhead as Vincent motioned for Leo to follow him up the staircase. Leo's footsteps echoed softly against the worn wooden steps. His hand brushed the railing, smooth in some places, splintered in others. He remembered walking here with Marco, hearing him talk about starting over, about building a life away from the darkness. Leo wondered if Marco ever truly believed it, or if he had always known this moment would come. Vincent's eyes stayed sharp, scanning every shadow. He moved like a man accustomed to danger, as if danger traveled with him. They reached the second floor. Marco's apartment was the last door at the end of the hallway. Vincent approached it slowly, his breathing steady, controlled. He pressed an ear to the wood. Silence. He slid the key into the lock and turned it. The door creaked open. The smell hit them immediately, a faint mixture of dust, old wood, and the distant memory of cigarette smoke. Marco had quit smoking years ago, but the scent lingered in the floorboards, as if refusing to forget him. Leo stepped inside, his chest tightening. The apartment looked exactly as he remembered, sparse, cold, simple. A worn couch, a small dining table with one chair, an empty bookshelf, and a single lamp that barely illuminated the room. Nothing moved. Nothing breathed. It felt wrong. Too still. Vincent closed the door behind them and walked slowly across the living room. His hand grazed the edge of the table, the back of the couch, the armrest. He was studying everything, searching for something out of place. Leo stood near the doorway, frozen by a heavy sense of dread. The apartment felt like a grave of a life Marco never finished living. Vincent finally spoke. If I were Marco, and I knew I was running from me, I'd hide the ledger somewhere I could watch. Watch what? Anyone who came looking for it. Vincent turned toward the bookshelf. The shelves were empty except for a dusty coffee mug holding a few pens. Vincent touched the mug, lifted it, then set it down again. Not here. He scanned the couch next, lifted the cushions, checked beneath. Nothing. Then he walked to the corner where a floor vent sat near the wall. He knelt, studying it closely. Rainwater pattered against the window behind them. The silence thickened. Marco wasn't a genius, but he wasn't stupid either. Leo stepped closer, slowly, nervously. Vincent reached into his coat, pulling out a screwdriver. You brought that? Vincent didn't look up. I bring everything. He unscrewed the vent cover. Leo leaned closer, breath trembling. Behind the metal grate was a folded bundle of black plastic. Vincent's movements became careful, measured. He slid the bundle out and unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a battered leather notebook, edges creased, pages swollen slightly from humidity. The ledger, Marco's sin, Vincent's empire, the reason people had died. Vincent held it in both hands, staring at it silently. Leo had never seen him look like that. Not like a predator, not like a killer, but like a man holding his own fate. He opened the ledger. Page after page of names, numbers, dates, locations, payments, murders, bribes, every dirty secret, every crime, every piece of leverage Vincent had ever claimed ownership of. Leo shivered. Why didn't Marco burn it? Vincent didn't answer. He kept flipping pages, eyes scanning the ink as if it might disappear. Then he stopped. A page near the middle had writing in a different pen, different handwriting. Marco's handwriting. Vincent's jaw tightened as he read. Leo couldn't see the words, but he saw Vincent's expression change. His face darkened, eyes turning colder, sharper, more dangerous than Leo had ever seen. Vincent whispered, "He planned to betray me again." Leo swallowed. What does it say? Vincent didn't respond. He closed the ledger gently, too gently. Then he stood. Come on, we're leaving. Leo hesitated. What now? Vincent stepped closer, lowering his voice. Now we go somewhere safe, somewhere to think. But something in his tone felt wrong, dead wrong. Before Leo could react, the apartment door behind them creaked. A heavy thud echoed. Leo spun.
3 officers stood in the doorway, guns raised, drenched from the rain. Their flashlights cut through the dim apartment like blades. "Police!" one shouted. "Hands where we can see them!" Vincent didn't move. Leo raised his hands immediately, heart lurching into his throat. The officer stepped in. "Vincent Caro,
Drop the book. Leo's breath hitched. Vincent exhaled softly, as though bored. You've been following me. We got a tip, another officer snapped. Oh, from who? Leo felt ice crawl across his spine. Vincent looked at him, right at him. The officers shouted again, "Put it down!" Vincent's gaze drifted to the window, rain streaking down the glass. His hand tightened around the ledger. Time stopped. Leo could hear nothing but the thundering of his own heartbeat. Then Vincent moved. Not toward the officers, not toward Leo, but backward, toward the hallway, the ledger still clutched in his hand. "Vincent!" Leo gasped. The officer shouted, lunging forward. Vincent ran into the hallway, boots pounding, the ledger swinging as he sprinted. Gunfire exploded. Leo screamed and ducked, covering his head as bullets tore through the doorway. Officers rushed past him, sprinting after Vincent. The building shook with every shot. Leo couldn't breathe. His hands trembled. His ears rang. He felt sick, terrified, confused. Then silence, a long, agonizing silence. Leo stumbled into the hallway, heart hammering. The officers were gone. The hallway was empty except for a trail of torn, wet footprints. He followed them slowly, down the hallway, down the staircase, toward the flickering lobby light. At the bottom of the stairs, he saw him. Vincent lay on the floor, bleeding, the ledger beside him, pages stained dark. 3 officers stood over him, guns still drawn. One was calling for backup. One was shouting into a radio. One was staring at Vincent with a shaking jaw. Vincent coughed, blood bubbling at his lips. His eyes flickered to Leo. For the first time, I saw fear in them. Real fear. Vincent whispered, voice fading. Marco was right. Leo froze. Vincent swallowed, breath rattling weakly. Never go back to the beginning. His eyes went still. His chest stopped moving. The officers moved in, securing the scene, retrieving the ledger, shouting orders. The world spun around Leo, voices screaming, radios crackling, rain pouring outside like a sky broken open. Leo stood motionless, empty. The ledger, the reason for everything, was lifted into an evidence bag. Officers poured into the building, the hallway filled with chaos. But Leo heard none of it. He heard only the rain. The same rain that fell the night Marco died. The same rain that fell when Vincent found him. The rain that washed away blood but never washed away guilt. Leo walked outside, into the storm, letting it soak him completely. The city lights looked blurred through the rain, glowing like quiet ghosts. He didn't know where he was going, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. The perfect robbery never existed. It was always a story waiting to end in blood. And tonight, the final chapter had been written, in ink, in truth, and in the rain-soaked pavement where sins finally caught up to the men who made them.